Good evening. This is Clara, and welcome to my channel. Today, I want to share with you a story that happened to me, and I promise you, you won't believe how it ended. My son texted, "I'm getting married tomorrow. I sold your house and took all your money from the bank. Bye." I just smiled. He didn't know that the house was all ready. Before we start, please like this video and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I had lived in my 2-story colonial house on Maple Street for 37 years. My late husband Thomas and I had bought it when we were newlyweds, raised our son David there, celebrated birthdays and Christmases within those cream-colored walls. After Thomas passed 5 years ago, the house became my sanctuary, filled with memories, yes, but also with the quiet peace I had learned to cherish. David was my only child, a successful software engineer, 42 years old, always polite when he called, though those calls had become less frequent over the past year. I told myself he was busy. Young men his age had careers, lives, priorities. I understood that. Or at least, I tried to. The first strange thing happened 3 months before the message. David visited on a Sunday afternoon, unusual since he rarely drove the 2 hours from the city without calling first. He walked through the house slowly, touching the banister, looking at the crown molding, asking casual questions about the property value, the local real estate market. "Just curious, Mom," he'd said when I raised an eyebrow. "The market's hot right now. You ever think about downsizing?" I had laughed it off. Downsize? Where would I put all my memories? The second sign came 6 weeks later. I received a call from my bank asking me to confirm some account verification details. When I called back using the number on my actual bank card, not the one the caller had given me, the bank representative seemed confused. "We didn't call you, Mrs. Patterson. But I do see here that someone requested information about your accounts 2 weeks ago. They had your social security number." My stomach tightened. Only David had access to that information. I had given it to him years ago when he helped me set up online banking. Then came the third sign. David's girlfriend, fiancée, he'd called her when he introduced us briefly at a restaurant 4 months back, sent me a friend request on Facebook. Melissa. 28 years old, blonde, with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I accepted, thinking perhaps she wanted to build a relationship with me. Instead, her questions in our message exchanges felt probing. How was I managing the house alone? Did I have a will? Had I thought about retirement communities? Why was a woman I barely knew asking about my will? I began paying attention. Really paying attention. I noticed that David had stopped asking about my health and started asking about my assets. I noticed that Melissa's posts on social media showed designer bags, expensive restaurants, exotic vacation destinations, all on a yoga instructor's salary. My son was planning something. I could feel it the way you feel a storm coming, that pressure in the air before the first thunderclap. And then, on a Tuesday morning in October, my phone buzzed with a text message from David. "Tomorrow I'm getting married. I sold your house and took all your money from the bank. Bye." I stood in my kitchen, reading those words 3 times. My hand didn't shake. My breath stayed steady. Because unlike my son, I had learned something important during my 70 years on this earth. Always have a backup plan. I simply smiled. David didn't know that the house he'd sold had been transferred into an irrevocable trust 3 months ago, the same week of his suspicious visit. He didn't know that the bank accounts he thought he'd emptied were decoy accounts I'd set up, containing exactly $500 each. He didn't know that my real assets, the ones my late husband and I had carefully accumulated, were safely protected in places he couldn't touch. He didn't know that his mother wasn't the naive, helpless old woman he apparently thought I was. The message sat on my phone screen like a confession. Evidence. Proof of intent. My son had just admitted, in writing, to fraud, theft, and elder abuse. I set down my coffee cup and looked around my kitchen. My kitchen, in my house, filled with my memories. Thomas's fishing rod still hung above the mantel. Our wedding photo sat on the windowsill. 37 years of life lived in these rooms. Did David really think I would let him take it all without a fight? I picked up my phone and took a screenshot of his message. Then I forwarded it to my email, saved it to my cloud drive, and printed a physical copy. My son had made his first move. Now it was my turn. I sat at my kitchen table for what felt like hours, though the clock showed only 20 minutes had passed. The screenshot of David's message glowed on my phone screen. Each word felt like a knife. I sold your house, took all your money. Bye. Bye. As if 70 years of my life, 37 years in this home, decades of motherhood could be dismissed with a casual bye. My hands finally started to shake. Not from fear, from rage. I forced myself to breathe slowly, the way the grief counselor had taught me after Thomas died. In for 4 counts, hold for 4, out for 4. The shaking stopped. Rage was useless without direction. I needed clarity. First, I needed to assess the actual damage. I opened my laptop and logged into my real bank accounts, not the decoy ones David had accessed. Everything was intact. The trust account Thomas and I had established, untouched. The investment portfolio, managed by our financial advisor, Richard Chen, safe. The savings account at the credit union, David didn't know existed, full. Thank God I had listened to my instincts 3 months ago. But what about the house? I pulled up the county property records website, my heart pounding despite my precautions. I typed in my address and waited for the page to load. There it was. Owner, the Margaret Patterson Irrevocable Living Trust. Filed on July 15th. Official. Legal. Untouchable. David couldn't have sold what he didn't own, but he thought he had, which meant he'd forged documents. He'd committed fraud. My son, the boy I had rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bicycle, sent to college, was a criminal. The pain hit me then, sharp and deep in my chest. This wasn't about money or property anymore. This was about betrayal. About discovering that the child you'd devoted your life to saw you as nothing more than an obstacle to wealth, an asset to liquidate. When had I lost him? Where had I failed? No. I stopped that thought immediately. I hadn't failed. I had loved him, raised him with values, given him every opportunity. David's choices were his own, and those choices had consequences. I stood up and paced my kitchen, thinking. David believed he'd won. He believed I was helpless, robbed, probably devastated. He and Melissa were likely celebrating right now, planning their wedding with my money, shopping for furniture for my house. Let them celebrate. Overconfidence made people careless. I needed a plan, not just to protect myself, I'd already done that, but to expose what David had done, to make sure he faced real consequences. And yes, I'll admit it, to make him understand the magnitude of his betrayal. My phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, another call. Same unknown number. Then a text from that number. Mrs. Patterson, this is Brandon Webb from Coastal Realty. I have buyers scheduled to view your property tomorrow at 2 p.m. Please confirm you'll have the house ready. As discussed with your son, all personal items should be removed by Friday. My blood ran cold, then hot. David hadn't just claimed to sell my house. He'd actually listed it. He'd found a real estate agent, forged my signature on documents, and put my home on the market. This was bigger than I'd thought. This wasn't just theft. This was an elaborate, premeditated scheme. I screenshot the message. More evidence. Then I opened a new note on my laptop and began writing. Plan of action. 1. Document everything. Save all messages, calls, emails. 2. Contact attorney. Need to know my legal options. 3. Inform the bank, report attempted fraud. 4. Contact realtor, expose the fraudulent listing. Inform the police, explore criminal charges. I stared at point 5. Could I really have my own son arrested? Another text from David. Hope you're packed, Mom. New owners take possession next week. You should thank me. I got you a great price. The emoji made me want to throw my phone across the room. Yes, I could have him arrested. But first, I needed to be smart. I needed evidence that would hold up in court. I needed to understand exactly what David had done and how. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Chen Financial Services, this is Richard. Richard, it's Margaret Patterson. I need your help. My son has just attempted to steal everything I own. There was a pause. Then, tell me everything. And I did. Richard Chen recommended an attorney, Elizabeth Morrison, a family law specialist who also handled elder abuse cases. She's tough, Richard said. You'll need tough. I met her the next morning in her downtown office. Elizabeth was in her 50s, with steel gray hair pulled back in a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. I showed her everything. David's messages, the realtor's texts, my trust documents, my bank statements. She examined each piece of evidence with the precision of a surgeon. Mrs. Patterson, your son has committed multiple felonies. Identity theft, forgery, attempted grand larceny, elder abuse. We're talking years in prison. I don't want him in prison, I said automatically, then stopped. Did I mean that? I want him to understand what he's done, to face consequences, to stop. Elizabeth looked at me over her reading glasses. Sometimes those things require prison, Margaret. May I call you Margaret? I nodded. Your son didn't make a mistake. He planned this. The forged documents, the realtor listing, the bank access. This took weeks, maybe months of preparation. And he sent you that message to what? Gloat? Make sure you felt helpless? She shook her head. That's cruelty. She was right. I knew she was right. Here's what we'll do, Elizabeth continued. First, I'll contact this realtor, Brandon Webb, and inform him the listing is fraudulent. I'll provide proof that the property is held in trust and that any documents he received were forged. Second, I'll file a police report. Third, we'll get a restraining order preventing David from accessing your accounts or property. Fourth, a restraining order against my own son? Margaret. Elizabeth's voice softened slightly. Your son sent you a message saying he stole everything you own and said, bye. He doesn't get to show up at your door now. I sat back in my chair. When had my life become a legal drama? Let's start with the realtor, I said quietly. Then we'll see what David does. Elizabeth made the call right there, putting it on speaker. Brandon Webb sounded young, eager, and increasingly nervous as Elizabeth explained the situation. But Mr. Patterson provided all the documentation, Brandon stammered. He had a power of attorney, the deed, everything. He said his mother was moving to assisted living and couldn't handle the transaction herself. Assisted living? David had told people I was incapacitated. Mr. Webb, those documents are forgeries, Elizabeth said crisply. The property is held in an irrevocable trust. Margaret Patterson is sitting right here with me, fully competent and very much in control of her affairs. You need to cancel that listing immediately and provide us with copies of every document David Patterson gave you." "Oh my God," Brandon said. "Oh my God, I could lose my license. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." "We understand, Mr. Webb. Cancel the listing. Send the documents. Today." Within an hour, Brandon had emailed everything. I stared at the PDFs on Elizabeth's computer screen. My signature, forged on at least 8 different documents, a fake power of attorney, a fraudulent deed transfer, a forged letter from me authorizing the sale. David had even forged a doctor's note claiming I had dementia. The evidence was damning, indisputable, criminal. "This is your proof," Elizabeth said. "This is what you need for the police, for court, for everything." My phone buzzed. David. "Mom, got a weird call from some realtor saying the house sale is canceled? What's going on? Did you do something?" I showed the message to Elizabeth. She smiled grimly. "He's panicking. Good." I typed back, "I protected my assets, David, like any intelligent person would." 3 dots appeared immediately indicating he was typing. They stopped. Started again. Stopped. Finally, "We need to talk. This is a misunderstanding." "No misunderstanding," I wrote. "You forged my signature. You committed fraud. You tried to steal my home. Mom, I was trying to help you. You can't manage that big house anymore. I was going to find you a nice apartment." "Help me? By forging documents and taking my money without my knowledge or consent?" "Don't contact me again, David." "Are you serious right now?" "I'm your son." Elizabeth gently took my phone. "Let me handle this." She typed, "This is Elizabeth Morrison, Mrs. Patterson's attorney. All further communication must go through my office. Any attempt to contact Mrs. Patterson directly will be considered harassment." She hit send and handed my phone back. Within seconds, my phone rang. "David." I declined. It rang again. 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 "He's scared," Elizabeth observed. "He knows the realtor talked. He knows you have proof. He's realizing his plan fell apart." "What will he do now?" I asked. Elizabeth's expression was grim. "In my experience, he'll either beg for forgiveness or double down with threats. Either way, prepare yourself. The next phase won't be pleasant." She was right about that, too. The police report was filed Thursday morning. Detective Sarah Ramirez took my statement, examined the evidence Elizabeth provided, and her expression grew darker with each forged document. "Mrs. Patterson, I want to be straight with you," she said. "This is your son. If we pursue charges, he will be arrested. He will likely face trial. He could go to prison. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Thomas. What would he have said? Thomas, who had worked 60-hour weeks to provide for our family, who had taught David to fish and play baseball and be honest. Thomas would have been heartbroken, but Thomas would also have demanded accountability. "I'm prepared," I said. Detective Ramirez nodded. "We'll need a few days to build the case, interview the realtor, verify the forgeries. In the meantime, do not engage with your son directly. If he shows up at your house, call 911 immediately." I drove home feeling simultaneously empowered and exhausted. I had done it. I had taken official action against my own child. My phone had 17 missed calls, all from David or unknown numbers that were probably Melissa. I was unlocking my front door when I heard it, a car pulling into my driveway. I turned around. David's silver Lexus. He got out, and Melissa emerged from the passenger side. She wore designer sunglasses despite the overcast sky and carried a Chanel purse I knew cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "David," the attorney said, "I don't care what some lawyer said." David strode toward me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my son's face before: desperation mixed with rage. "You're my mother. We should be able to talk." "After what you did?" I kept my voice steady, though my heart hammered. "You forged my signature. You tried to steal my house. I was helping you." His voice cracked. "You can't take care of that place anymore. You're 70 years old." "I'm 70, not dead. And I certainly don't need a son who steals from me." Melissa stepped forward, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Mrs. Patterson, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. David loves you so much. He just wanted to make sure you were taken care of. By forging documents? By emptying bank accounts? That's love?" Melissa's smile faltered. "Those accounts barely had anything in them anyway." She stopped, realizing her mistake. "How would you know what was in my accounts, Melissa?" I asked quietly. "Unless you helped him access them." David grabbed Melissa's arm. "Don't say anything else." "It's too late, David. The police have everything. The forgeries, the fraudulent listing, all of it." His face went pale. "You called the police? On your own son? You stole from your own mother." "I didn't steal anything, because apparently you moved everything." His voice rose to a shout. Neighbors' curtains twitched. "Do you know how embarrassing this is? I told the realtor we'd closed. I told Melissa's parents we bought a house. We spent money based on that sale." And there it was. The truth. "You already spent the money you thought you stole from me?" Melissa jumped in, her sweet mask completely gone now. "We had deposits to make. Wedding venues don't book themselves. David told me his mother had millions just sitting there." "Melissa, shut up!" David hissed. But she was spiraling now, her voice shrill. "We could lose everything. The venue, the caterer, the honeymoon we already booked to Bali. You selfish old woman, do you know what you've done to us?" The words hung in the air. Selfish. For protecting what I'd earned. I looked at my son. "David, you need to leave my property, now." "Mom, please." His tone shifted to begging. "We can fix this. We can work something out. Just call off your lawyer. Drop the police report. I'll pay you back." "With what money? The money you already spent?" "I'll get it. I'll take out a loan. Mom, please. They're talking about pressing charges for fraud, for elder abuse. I could go to prison." "Yes," I said simply. "You could." His expression hardened. "You'd really do that? Send your own son to prison? You'd really steal from your own mother?" Melissa grabbed David's arm. "Come on, baby, she's not worth it. Let her rot in that house alone. We'll figure something else out." David stared at me for a long moment. I saw the calculation in his eyes, the weighing of options. Then he leaned in close, his voice low and threatening. "If you do this, Mom, we're done. Forever. You'll never see me again. You'll die alone in that house. I'd rather die alone with my dignity than be robbed by my own child." He turned and walked away. Melissa threw me a look of pure hatred before following him to the car. They drove off, tires squealing slightly. I stood in my driveway, shaking. Not from fear, from adrenaline. I'd done it. I'd stood up to them. Inside, I locked every door, closed every curtain, and sat in Thomas's old armchair. I allowed myself exactly 10 minutes to cry. For the son I'd lost. For the family that was broken. For the grandmother I'd never be. Then I dried my eyes, made myself tea, and called Elizabeth. "They came to the house," I said. It didn't go well. I'll expedite the restraining order, she replied immediately. Margaret, you did the right thing. Had I? In the moment, it was hard to tell. I gave myself permission to rest. 3 days of doing nothing but gardening, reading, and trying not to think about David's last words. 3 days of relative peace. I weeded my garden, organized Thomas's old workshop, called my sister in Florida. Linda had been horrified when I told her everything. Maggie, I never liked that boy, she'd said bluntly. Remember when he was 12 and stole money from your purse? You said it was a phase. It was a phase, I'd defended him weakly. Phases end, Maggie. Patterns don't. Maybe she'd been right all along. On Sunday evening, my doorbell rang. I checked the peephole. A delivery man holding an enormous bouquet of white roses. My favorite. I opened the door cautiously. Can I help you? Delivery for Margaret Patterson. Need you to sign here. I signed, took the flowers, and found the card. Mom, I'm so sorry. I was stressed about the wedding and made terrible choices. Can we please talk? I miss you. I love you. David. I stared at the card for a long time. This was the son I remembered. Apologetic, loving, wanting reconciliation. But the roses probably cost $200. Money he'd planned to steal from me. An hour later, another delivery. A basket of gourmet foods from Dean and DeLuca. Another card. Please forgive me. You raised me better than this. I want to make it right. Then a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Patterson, this is Melissa. I know we got off on the wrong foot. I spoke out of turn. David is devastated. He loves you so much. Could we please meet for coffee? Just the two of us? Woman to woman? I didn't respond to any of it. The next morning, a registered letter arrived. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a handwritten note from David. Mom, this is a start on paying you back. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try to make amends. Please don't pursue the criminal charges. Please give me a chance to be your son again. I'm begging you. $5,000. A fraction of what he'd tried to take. A calculated gesture. I called Elizabeth. They're trying to buy their way out. Don't accept any money. Don't respond to any contact. And definitely don't meet with Melissa alone. That sounds like an ambush. But the deliveries kept coming. More flowers. A framed photo of David and me from his college graduation. A donation made in my name to the animal shelter I volunteered at. Every gift was accompanied by increasingly desperate messages. I felt the pull of it. The part of me that wanted to believe my son was truly sorry. The part that missed having a family. Then my phone rang. My friend Caroline from church. Margaret, I heard what happened. Are you okay? I hadn't told anyone except Linda and my legal team, but of course word had spread. Small town, big news. I'm managing, I said carefully. I'm coming over, and I'm bringing Susan and Patricia. Caroline, you don't need to. Hush, we'll be there in 20 minutes. They arrived with casseroles, wine, and righteous indignation. 3 women I'd known for over a decade, settling around my kitchen table like a protective fortress. My nephew tried to pull something similar with his grandmother, Susan said, her voice hard. Convinced her to sign over her house for her own good. She ended up in a state-run nursing home while he sold her property. She died 6 months later, heartbroken. Patricia squeezed my hand. You did the right thing, Margaret. What David did isn't just wrong. It's evil. Taking advantage of a parent's trust like that. He's my son, I whispered. He sent me flowers. He says he's sorry. Sorry he got caught, Caroline said bluntly. Margaret, abusers always apologize when they face consequences. It's part of the cycle. They abuse, they apologize, They promise to change, then they abuse again. Don't fall for it. But what if he really means it this time? Susan leaned forward. Did he apologize before he got caught? Before the realtor called? Before the police got involved? She was right. He hadn't. That's not remorse, Patricia said gently. That's damage control. We talked for hours. They shared stories, offered support, reminded me I wasn't alone. By the time they left, I felt steadier, clearer. The flowers went in the trash. The check was photographed for evidence and returned uncashed. The messages went unanswered. David and Melissa had retreated for now, trying a softer approach. But I knew better. Predators don't give up. They just change tactics. I slept better that night than I had in weeks, knowing I had people in my corner. Real people who cared about me, not what they could take from me. They came on a Wednesday afternoon when they knew I'd be home. I was transplanting tomato seedlings in my backyard when I heard the gate latch click. David walked through first, hands raised in a peaceful gesture. Melissa followed, dressed more conservatively than I'd ever seen her. Modest dress, minimal makeup, hair in a simple ponytail. Mom, please. Just 5 minutes. I should have called the police immediately. The restraining order was in process but not yet finalized. But something made me pause. Maybe curiosity about what they'd try next. 5 minutes, I said, standing and removing my gardening gloves. Out here, not in my house. We stood in my garden, surrounded by the flowers Thomas had planted years ago. David looked at the roses he'd cultivated, and I saw emotion flicker across his face. Real emotion? Or performance? Mom, I've been doing a lot of thinking, he began, his voice soft, humble. You were right. What I did was wrong. I was stressed about money, about the wedding, and I made terrible choices. I know saying sorry doesn't fix it, but I am sorry. Deeply, genuinely sorry. Melissa nodded earnestly. Mrs. Patterson, I convinced David he was doing the right thing. I pushed him when I should have stopped him. This is partly my fault, too. They'd rehearsed this. I could tell by the way they tag-teamed, by the carefully chosen words. What do you want, David? I asked directly. I want to rebuild our relationship. I want to earn back your trust. And he paused, looking at Melissa, who nodded encouragingly. I want to ask if you'd consider not pressing charges. Not for me. I deserve whatever consequences come. But for my future. A felony conviction would destroy my career, my life. I'd lose everything. You were willing to let me lose everything, I pointed out. I know. He ran his hands through his hair. I wasn't thinking straight. But Mom, if you press charges, I'll go to prison. Is that really what you want? Your only son in prison? There it was. The guilt card. What I want is for you to understand the gravity of what you did. I do understand. His voice rose slightly. Then he caught himself, lowered it again. I understand completely, and I'm willing to do anything to make it right. Therapy, family counseling, whatever you want. I'll sign over my rights to any inheritance, not that I deserve one. I'll repay every penny you spent on legal fees. Just please don't send me to prison. Melissa stepped closer to me, her eyes wide and pleading. Mrs. Patterson, I love your son. We want to build a life together. We want to have children someday. Your grandchildren. Don't you want that? Don't you want to be a grandmother? The grandchildren card. Of course. If you wanted me to be a grandmother, you shouldn't have tried to rob me. Melissa's mask slipped for just a second. I saw annoyance flash across her face before she smoothed it away. We made a mistake, she said, through what was clearly gritted teeth behind her smile. A mistake is forgetting to water the plants, I said calmly. What you did was a calculated, premeditated crime. David's expression shifted. The pleading sun faded, replaced by something harder. Mom, I'm trying to be reasonable here. I'm trying to apologize and make amends, but you're being stubborn and vindictive. Vindictive? My voice stayed level. I'm protecting myself from criminals. Criminals? I'm your son. Who forged my signature, who tried to steal my house, who planned to leave me with nothing. Melissa abandoned her act entirely. Oh, please. You have more than enough money. You're sitting on a fortune while young people like us are drowning in student debt and wedding costs and… Stop talking, David hissed at her. But she was done pretending. No, I'm sick of this. We had a plan. We had everything arranged. The house was going to sell for $650,000. We could have paid off everything and had enough left over for a down payment on our own place. But this selfish old woman had to ruin everything. You wanted my house to buy your own house? The audacity was breathtaking. David grabbed Melissa's arm. We're leaving. No, Melissa shook him off. She needs to understand what she's doing to us. The venue won't refund our deposit. The wedding planner is threatening to sue. My parents think I'm marrying a criminal. Do you know how humiliating this is? Get out of my yard, I said quietly. You're a bitter, lonely old woman, Melissa spat. David was right. You don't deserve his love. You don't deserve anything. You'll die alone in this house and no one will care. David's face had gone red, not with shame at Melissa's words, with agreement. You want to know the truth, Mom? His voice was cold now, all pretense gone. You are selfish. Dad left you everything, and you just sit on it. You don't need this big house. You don't need all that money. But God forbid you help your own son. God forbid you make things easier for the next generation. I didn't earn that money to make your life easy. I earned it through decades of work. You didn't earn anything. Dad earned it, and you're just hoarding it like a dragon. The comparison to a fairy tale villain would have been funny if it wasn't so ugly. Leave, now, or I'm calling the police. David stepped toward me, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of real fear. He was bigger than me, younger, stronger. You call the police. You go through with those charges, and you're dead to me, he said. I'll never speak to you again. I'll tell everyone what a horrible mother you were. I'll make sure you die alone and forgotten. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling 911. Melissa grabbed David's arm. She's not worth it, baby. Come on. Let her rot here. They turned to leave, but David paused at the gate. This is your last chance, Mom. Drop the charges, give us what we're owed, or lose me forever. I already lost you, I said, the moment you decided to betray me. The gate slammed behind them. I stood in my garden, shaking, and dialed Elizabeth's number. They came to your house? She asked, horrified. I have the whole thing recorded on my phone, I said. I'd started recording the moment they walked through the gate. Send it to me immediately. This just made our case even stronger. My hands shook as I sent the file. Not from fear anymore, from determination. They'd shown their true faces. Now it was time to show them mine. The court hearing was set for a Thursday in November. Not a trial yet, just a preliminary hearing where the judge would review the evidence and determine if there was sufficient cause to proceed with criminal charges. Elizabeth had warned me. David will be there with his attorney. They'll try to paint this as a family misunderstanding. Be prepared. I wore my best navy suit, the one I'd bought for Thomas's funeral. Armor. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, less dramatic. Just a judge's bench, a few rows of seats, fluorescent lights humming overhead. David sat at the defendant's table with a lawyer who looked expensive. Slicked back hair, designer suit. How was David paying for him? Melissa sat in the gallery, wearing a demure dress and pearls, playing the dutiful fiancé. Detective Ramirez sat on my side of the room, along with Elizabeth. Caroline, Susan, and Patricia had come for support, sitting quietly behind me. David didn't look at me when I entered. His jaw was tight, his hands clasped on the table in front of him. The judge, Honorable Patricia Yamamoto, was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and an expression that suggested she'd seen every trick in the book. This is case number 24 CR 8847, The People versus David Patterson, regarding charges of elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and attempted grand larceny. Judge Yamamoto looked over her glasses. Mr. Patterson, you understand these are serious charges? Yes, Your Honor. David's voice was steady. His attorney stood. Your Honor, Richard Chen for the defense. We'd like to request that these charges be dismissed. This is clearly a family dispute being criminalized unnecessarily. Mr. Patterson was acting in what he believed to be his mother's best interests. His mother's best interests? Judge Yamamoto's eyebrow arched. By forging her signature and attempting to sell her house without her knowledge? My client believed his mother was declining mentally and needed intervention. I have a medical evaluation from Mrs. Patterson's physician dated 2 weeks ago, stating she is in perfect mental health, Elizabeth interjected, standing. There was no decline, Your Honor. There was only a son who wanted his mother's assets. May I see that evaluation? Elizabeth provided it. Judge Yamamoto read it carefully. Mr. Chen, your client obtained a forged doctor's note claiming his mother had dementia. The court has the original fraudulent document, and we have verification from the actual doctor that he never wrote it. Would you like to explain that? David's attorney faltered. Your Honor, my client may have been misled by others about his mother's condition. Who misled him? The judge asked sharply. A pause. David whispered something to his lawyer. We're not prepared to answer that at this time. Convenient? Judge Yamamoto turned to the prosecution. Ms. Morrison, what evidence does the state have? Elizabeth presented everything methodically. The forged documents, the bank access records, David's text messages, including the buy message, the recording from my garden where Melissa admitted they'd planned to use my house sale for their own down payment, Brandon Webb's testimony about the fraudulent listing. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer blow. I watched David's face grow paler, his attorney more agitated. Your Honor, Chen tried again. This is a family matter. Mrs. Patterson is clearly vindictive and— Objection! Elizabeth's voice was steel. Counsel is attacking the victim. Sustained. Mr. Chen, focus on facts, not character assassination. Chen shuffled papers nervously. Your Honor, we'd like to propose a resolution. Mr. Patterson is willing to make full restitution, attend counseling, and— Make restitution with what funds? Judge Yamamoto asked. According to the financial disclosure, Mr. Patterson and his fiancée have already spent the money they fraudulently obtained from the decoy accounts Mrs. Patterson set up. They have significant debts and negative cash flow. How exactly will he make restitution? Silence from the defense table. The judge turned to me. Mrs. Patterson, would you like to make a statement? I stood, my legs steadier than I expected. Your Honor, 3 months ago, I noticed my son asking unusual questions about my property and finances. I trusted my instincts and protected my assets legally. I'm grateful I did, Because my son's plan was to steal everything I owned, leaving me destitute. When his plan failed, he didn't apologize sincerely. He tried to manipulate me with gifts and guilt. When that didn't work, he and his fiancée came to my home and threatened me. They told me I was selfish for not letting them steal from me. They said I'd die alone. My voice didn't waver. Your Honor, I'm 70 years old. I worked my entire life for what I have. My husband and I built our life together. David isn't entitled to it just because he's my son. And what he did wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated, cruel betrayal. I want him held accountable. Judge Yamamoto nodded slowly. Mr. Patterson, do you have anything to say? David stood. His attorney tried to pull him back down, but he shook him off. Your Honor, I made mistakes, but she's my mother. She's supposed to forgive me. She's supposed to help me. That's what mothers do. Mothers are also human beings with rights, the judge said dryly. They're not ATMs. She has more money than she'll ever need. She's old. She doesn't need that big house anymore. I was trying to help her downsize. By forging her signature and stealing her assets? Judge Yamamoto's voice was ice. Mr. Patterson, that's not help. That's theft. David's composure cracked. This is insane. She's my mother. I shouldn't be in court for trying to help my mother. Melissa stood up in the gallery. This is ridiculous. He's a good man. His mother is vindictive and, ma'am, sit down or I'll have you removed, Judge Yamamoto said. Melissa sat, but her face was red with rage. The judge looked at all the evidence before her, then at David, then at me. I'm finding sufficient cause to proceed with all charges. Trial is set for January 15th. Mr. Patterson, you're hereby ordered to have no contact with Mrs. Patterson or her property. Violating this order will result in immediate arrest. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. David turned to me, his face a mixture of shock and fury. You're really doing this. You're actually going to destroy me. No, David, I said quietly. You destroyed yourself. His attorney grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the exit. Melissa followed, throwing me a look of pure hatred. Elizabeth put her hand on my shoulder. You did, beautifully. I nodded, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. Outside the courtroom, Caroline hugged me tight. You were so brave, Maggie. Brave? I'd just ensured my only child would face trial for trying to rob me. But I'd also ensured he'd face consequences for his actions. Sometimes, that's what love requires. The trial in January was mercifully brief. David's attorney tried every angle: family misunderstanding, good intentions, mental health struggles. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution presented the forged documents, the fake doctor's note, the recorded conversation in my garden where Melissa admitted their plan, David's own text message. I sold your house and took all your money. Bye. On the stand, David tried to maintain that he'd been trying to help me, that he'd planned to give me some of the proceeds from the house sale. How much were you planning to give your mother? The prosecutor asked. David hesitated. I hadn't decided yet. But you had decided to spend the money on your wedding venue, your honeymoon to Bali, and a down payment on your own house. Correct? That was Melissa's idea. So you're blaming your fiancé now? Melissa, watching from the gallery, looked stricken. The prosecutor showed the jury David's purchase history from his credit cards. Charges at luxury hotels, high-end restaurants, designer stores, all made in the weeks after he'd accessed my decoy accounts. Mr. Patterson, if you were truly acting in your mother's best interests, why were you spending her money on yourself? He had no good answer. Brandon Webb testified about the forged documents David provided, the fake power of attorney, the false claim that I had dementia. Richard Chen, my financial advisor, testified about how I'd proactively moved my assets into trust 3 months before David's attempted theft, proving I was of sound mind and acting independently. Caroline, Susan, and Patricia testified as character witnesses for me, describing me as sharp, independent, and fully capable of managing my own affairs. The defense called Melissa to the stand, and it was a disaster. Ms. Thompson, were you aware that Mr. Patterson was forging his mother's signature on legal documents? No. I mean, I knew he was handling her affairs because she was getting older. Did you believe she had dementia? Well, David said she was forgetful and... The prosecutor played the recording from my garden. Melissa's voice. The house was going to sell for $650,000. We could have paid off everything. Ms. Thompson, that doesn't sound like someone who believed they were helping an elderly woman. That sounds like someone who was counting their profits. Melissa broke down on the stand, crying, trying to claim she'd been manipulated by David. But the jury had heard her voice on that recording. They'd heard the greed. David's attorney made a last-ditch effort in closing arguments. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a family tragedy. A son who made terrible choices, yes, but not a criminal. The Patterson family can heal without destroying David's life with a felony conviction. The prosecutor's closing was simpler. David Patterson forged legal documents. He stole from his mother. He planned to leave her homeless and penniless. That's not a family disagreement. That's elder abuse. That's fraud. That's theft. And it deserves punishment. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. David's face went white. Melissa sobbed loudly in the gallery. His attorney immediately began preparing appeals paperwork. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Yamamoto looked at David with an expression of deep disappointment. Mr. Patterson, I've seen many cases in this courtroom. Theft, fraud, family disputes. But what you did to your own mother is particularly egregious. You didn't just steal money. You violated the fundamental trust between parent and child. You planned to leave your 70-year-old mother destitute and homeless. And when caught, you showed no genuine remorse, only anger that your plan failed. David opened his mouth to speak, but she held up a hand. I'm sentencing you to 5 years in state prison for elder abuse and fraud. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to Mrs. Patterson for all legal fees and associated costs, totaling $47,000. You are prohibited from contacting Mrs. Patterson for a period of 10 years following your release. Do you understand? 5 years? David's voice cracked. Your Honor, please. Court is adjourned. As the bailiff led David away in handcuffs, he looked at me one last time. Not with remorse, with blame, as if this was my fault for not letting him rob me. Melissa ran from the courtroom, her sobs echoing in the hallway. Outside, reporters waited. Apparently, the case had attracted local media attention. Son attempts to steal elderly mother's life savings made for compelling headlines. Elizabeth guided me past them. No comment. Mrs. Patterson has no comment. In the parking lot, Caroline hugged me. It's over, Maggie. It's finally over. Was it, though? I'd won the legal battle. David was going to prison. Justice had been served. But I'd lost my son. Perhaps I'd lost him long before the trial, maybe years ago when he'd first decided his mother's money was more important than his mother's love. Thank you, I told Elizabeth, for everything. You were incredibly brave, she said. Not many people would have the strength to hold their own child accountable like this. Brave. That word again. I didn't feel brave. I felt tired and sad and strangely free. I drove home alone to my house on Maple Street. My house. Still mine. Still full of Thomas's memories and my own life. I'd protected it. I'd protected myself. And now I had to figure out how to live with the consequences of that protection. 6 months after the trial, my life had transformed completely. I expanded Thomas's rose garden and started volunteering at the animal shelter 3 times a week. The dogs offered unconditional affection, something I'd forgotten existed. Caroline started a support group for older women facing financial abuse from family. I shared my story. 23 women attended the first meeting. By the third, we had 47. We called ourselves the Silver Shield Society. You've started a movement, Elizabeth said. I reconnected with old friends. Linda visited from Florida. We took a road trip up the coast, laughing like we were young again. You seem lighter, she observed. She was right. I was 70, healthy, financially secure, and surrounded by genuine love. Meanwhile, David's life collapsed. His company fired him immediately. Melissa left 2 weeks after sentencing, posting online that she was the real victim. Her GoFundMe raised $300. The wedding venue sued them both. Melissa's parents sued David separately. He lost everything: job, reputation, future wages garnished indefinitely. From prison, he sent letters. I returned them unopened. On the 1-year anniversary of his text, I hosted a party celebrating survival. 70 women from Silver Shield Society filled my house. Richard Chen toasted, "To Margaret Patterson, who proved being kind doesn't mean being foolish." I'd protected what Thomas and I built and found peace. They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned the hard way that the full saying is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. The family you choose can be stronger than the family you're born into. I learned to trust my instincts. When something felt wrong, it was wrong. I learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. I learned that love without boundaries isn't love, it's enabling. Most importantly, I learned that being 70 doesn't mean being helpless. It means having 7 decades of wisdom, strength, and resilience. To anyone facing something similar, trust yourself. Protect yourself. You deserve safety and dignity regardless of who's threatening them. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have forgiven David? Pressed charges? Something else? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Thank you for listening to my story.